Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, David. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent.
We survived town meeting.
We survived town meeting. We were both wrong
Yep.
on the number of nights, and I guess happily so.
Yep, yep.
If we're going to err, let's err on being too long. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
The business of the town got done, and we can now move on to the next challenges.
Some of which we're going to talk about today. We have Peter Dion, the Municipal Gas and Light Department General Manager. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been a few years.
It has. It has.
But a lot has happened in very positive ways with the MGLD. You brought with you a presentation. Let's go into that first.
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've been up to. First of all, we're very proud of all the things that have taken place, and we'll talk a little bit about through the course of the show. But one of the things our board has really been focused on in the past year especially is our mission and vision and a lot of strategic planning initiatives, because a lot in the marketplace as a whole has changed. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to make sure that we were focused on the right things. So if you look at our traditional mission and goals and objectives, it was around keeping the lights on and the gas flowing and keeping the costs as low as possible, which are still going to be our mission for the next 30 to 50 years. But we have to add in some more elements to that as we go along in terms of environmental focus and achieving the state's goals of net zero by 2050. So in keeping that in mind, the board has taken a step back and really tried to look at our vision and mission for the next 30 years in a way that factors those elements in. So there's an understanding that the marketplace is constantly changing, and we need to be mindful of all the changes and not just the core mission of keep the lights on and keep the costs as low as possible. So with that in mind, we've updated our mission and our vision statements, which include not only the fact that we want to be reliable and cost effective, but also make sure we factor in the fact that our customers need to be involved in this next change, because it's going to involve changes for everybody. We're going to be promoting electrification and a move away from fossil fuels. So because of that, we need to make sure we're trying to incent the customers in the proper way and trying to support as they try to, move towards those missions and goals. So that's reflected in our mission and vision statement now, where we're looking to obviously maintain cost control and reliability, but also achieve the goals of the state. When the law was passed in 2021 that included us in the goals of net zero by 2050, we made sure that it was done in a way that protected municipals. In other words, we were a little bit different from IOUs. Investor-owned utilities go out to bid for their power supply every 6 months, so they can change what they want for a mix. We are different. Our costs are lower because we can invest in resources for the long term that keep our costs low, but we have to factor that in as we're making changes to that mix over the next 30 years. So that was kept in mind as we were included in that law in 2021, and now we have to follow that as we migrate our power supply to be net zero by 2050 also. So
And MLD had already been ahead of the curve on that,
Yeah,
really,
we
for
were-
years, decades, really.
right, and the 2030 goal is to be 50% non-carbon emitting by 2030. In Wakefield, we're already 52% in 2024. So we're on that path. We've taken a leadership role in some of the key projects that are going to help us get there. We were one of the founding members of Berkshire Wind, which is the large, at the time it was the largest wind farm in the state out on Brody Mountain in the Berkshires. And since that time, we've built the second phase of that project, and we're actually going to be embarking on a third phase in the coming years, as well as getting to the place where we'll probably be repowering the first phase by then, because it's been in place for almost 15 years now. So we've gotten a lot of benefit from a project like that. Hydropower, and nuclear. Nuclear is a key element of the non-carbon emitting future, and we need to be ready for that. That we have ownership in both Seabrook and Millstone, and those are keys to the non-carbon emitting future that we're going to have. So we wanted to make sure when that law was passed in 2021 that all those things that we were already doing were factored in. So that's part of our key goals and initiatives and vision. But what are the challenges we're going to face for the next 30 years? Those, it's meeting those goals. There's step goals for the next each decade. We need to be at 50% by 2030, 75% by 2040, and then 100% net zero by 2050. Now, what does net zero mean? It doesn't mean that all fossil fuels are gone and we're only renewables by 2050, but we have to have a net so that if we're getting solar all day, but it's not going to obviously be working at night, we need to make sure that the net of what we put in and take out comes out to a net zero. So that's why things like battery storage and other technologies that will be, help us store the renewable energy at the times when it's not available, those are all going to factor into the mix of being net zero by 2050. And so we're going to obviously try to reduce our reliance, but it probably won't be eliminated by then. But then also, what are the other things that we're going to do in terms of managing costs during that time? Today, we could be 100% green, but it would just be so exorbitantly expensive and it would take up so much land. We need to make sure that we're balancing those two things at the same time so that as we go to the future, we're managing it in a way that doesn't put everybody in a really bad state. And we also, the keys to reaching the goals involve our customers. Customers, moving to electric vehicles, moving to all electric heating sources over time. And I think those are the things that we need to provide the resources to help our customers help us achieve those goals. So that's kind of like the big picture and what's around what we're thinking about for what's next. So I'm hopeful that, as we go to farmers markets and have customer information sessions, that we really get to see and share that information with our customers so that they grow and understand it as what we're doing and why we're doing it. So what are we doing to meet those challenges that are coming up? On a load and reliability side, we're doing things like Green Choice. We've offered our customers the opportunity to buy all green resources. Right now, as I said, we're 52% non-carbon emitting. If you want the other 48% of your power supply to be non-carbon emitting, it costs money. So you can join Green Choice and we'll go procure either renewable energy credits or mechanisms to make the rest of your power supply all green or non-carbon emitting. In our case, what's happened with that program is as we've increased our percentage of non-carbon emitting, we've gone from 48% to 52%. The cost to our customers has come down ever so slightly. So to participate in Green Choice when we started it, it was about 2.2 cents extra on your bill to buy that other part. Since we've increased our supply and there's more resources available, that is down to 1.8 cents. So you'll see that as more non-carbon emitting resources become available, the cost of those resources will also go down a little bit. So that's one program we'll be running. We just actually added solar to the roof of our building, and we've created a community solar program. The Kenneth J. Chase Jr. Community Solar Farm is on the roof of 480 North Ave. There's two solar farms on that roof. One for our building to make sure we're part of the solution and reducing our own energy consumption, and the other part is a large section that we're allowing the customers to participate in a community solar. It's ideal for customers that homes or residences don't suit themselves well for solar on their own. So this is an opportunity to play in that environment. And then we have a third program on the supply side called Connected Homes, where customers can sign up the devices that they use to control their thermostats or their charging of vehicles or heating and cooling equipment. There's a bunch of different devices that can participate in the program. And when we're at times of peak, Connected Homes, through a third party, we actually will either increase the temperature on your AC or reduce your heating a little bit during those times of peak. And it acts almost like a small generating unit because putting all those resources together makes it act like it's taking load off the system and it looks like a generator. So that's another program we've been heavily involved in. And what's happening now, as those types of programs are becoming more popular, more and more types of devices are being included. So each year, for a while, Nest thermostat, which is one of the most common ones on the market weren't part of the program. Now they are. So there's a whole bunch of different things that are increasing that type of resource to us as well. In addition to that, what we're doing on the other side is obviously trying to incent that behavior through rebates. Trying to get customers to use the appliances and thermostats and types of equipment which will contribute in that way, as well as incenting through heat pump and insulation rebates the ability to encourage customers to switch over to all electric. And one of the things I think that's really important, and I'll talk about it in a second, is that it's not just converting your entire home to all electric heat, but if you can convert a part of it, it helps us take load off the gas system as well. And that's very important because one of the drivers of our cost on the gas side is the peak day. It's unbelievable what percentage of our overall gas cost is contributed to by the one peak day each winter. Whatever the day that is, that day in February that it was 2 degrees and we used, 1.5 times the amount of gas we normally do, that drives our cost for the whole year. So because of that, to the extent that we can curb that peak through the use of heat pumps or other technologies, that helps everybody's costs stay low. Because again, on the gas side, the cost of that peak day is a huge driver of our overall cost.
Well, and you still have quite a few homes in New England, in Wakefield in particular, that are oil heat, for instance, which is a traditional heat, after coal back in the 20s and 30s. So are you seeing a lot of people moving away from oil now to heat pumps, and what are the cost differentiations between the two?
So one of the things we're trying to do is obviously cover that. So going to heat pumps is more expensive, but some of the incentive programs that we're putting in place are trying to cut that cost differential. One of the things we're seeing so far is that a lot of people are using heat pumps as a supplemental resource rather than a replacement resource, which is still good because it's still helping. Over time, hopefully, as the heat pump technology advances and actually becomes cheaper, then I don't think you'll probably get to the place where you won't even need to provide incentives because you'll have the choice between and the cost won't the cost itself will be immeasurable in their difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though for those of us that have oil and don't have the ability to have gas because it's not on the street,
Right.
And can't go to the heat pump or it's not cost effective, you're using those interim levels, So I know for us, we got a big house, but there's only the two of us. There's no reason to heat this big house, right? But those couple of areas that we use that have, an electrical supplement makes all the difference in the world. And you've got to look at your oil bill, or you look at,
Right.
it makes all the difference in the world. So don't think you can't help. Every little bit helps the solution.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to convince, everybody that it's an incremental march towards the ultimate goal. So, and then obviously we're heavily involved in the solar and the EV side as well. We give 80 cents a watt on solar installations for residential homes. That typically cuts the cost of a solar project by about a third. And so that's a positive incentive on that side. And then on the other side, we're obviously promoting electric vehicles, and we have a charger program that we give you basically the equivalent of a level 2 charger for free. And our board just recently passed a time of use rate for charging. So that one of the things that's really important is if you have the capability to charge on non-peak times, which most customers do, there's a huge savings. The rate is significantly lower if you're charging off-peak than on-peak.
What is off-peak versus on-peak time?
So it's 4 to 9 right now. That's when the peak hits our system in New England. So during those times, but with the electric vehicle technology now, if you came home from work at 5:30 or 6 o'clock and you plugged it in, you can program that charger to not actually start charging till 9 o'clock. So with the advancements in technology, it really doesn't have to impact it. And again, that's not for every customer, but it's for customers in that mode that they can manage whether they need to charge during those peak hours.
Right.
And over time, I think you'll see those peak hours probably shift a little bit as we're able to do. when I began in the industry years ago, the peak was always from 2 to 4 or 5. You know, that's when commercial load was the highest, and as I've been in the business for a long time, that peak is now switched from 2 to 4 or 5 to 5 to 9. That it's shifted to the evening.
Yeah.
Because of all the technologies and the advancements of solar and peak management programs and things like that. The peak of our New England system as a whole has moved later.
Right.
And I think as we do more things to attack the 4 to 9 p.m. window, you'll see the peaks even shift further. So,
You know, the other thing that comes to mind is we have an established infrastructure that dates back to the teens a century ago of gas stations for cars. With the changeover to electric, how are we going to now replace those gas stations with places that people can charge up when they need to away from home?
I think there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done in that environment. I think in the town of Wakefield, partnering with Steve in the town, we have probably more large-scale charging stations than most towns around us. So, but I think ultimately, as you said, the solution's going to come when then capitalism and the market takes over and kind of provides that. In the meantime, I view us as kind of a bridge to that. So with the town, we've installed a level 3 charger at the parking lot downtown. We have 2 at the head of the lake. We have a bunch of level 3.
One at the Civic Center?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one at the Civic Center. We have a couple at American Legion. Excuse me. So, but I still don't view us as being the entity that's in that business in the long term. I think we're more of a bridge to that future. And I think, you know, but the marketplace is going to need to see that needs to take, you know, that change needs to take place. And I think it's gradually starting, but it's going to take time.
Well, because we are seeing changes along the way. You know, if you're going north on 95 into Maine now, the rest stop near Portland, you can pull into where the gas station is, and there are also recharging stations there, and you can at least get enough of a charge over a cup of coffee to get to your destination.
That's the goal.
Anywhere else in Maine.
In the mornings now, the 2 of our chargers at the head of the lake are always occupied. You'll see commercial fleets that stop there for an hour on their way out to, you know, and not just from Wakefield, but from all over, traveling 128. You'll see, you know, a commercial truck pull in, charge for a half an hour, and then head off. And so we're kind of seeing the future evolve, and hopefully the next steps. And you know, at the federal government level and the local level, there's a lot of incentive to keep that growing. So
And we've also worked together, the town and the light department, you know, continuing a great partnership. New buildings, new construction of a certain level, that needs to be electric.
Right.
Okay. And needs to have charging stations in it. So, you know, the approvals from the Board of Appeals, it's kind of, everything's working together to move towards this.
Well, sure. Town hall, the schools, for you know,
The
faculty.
new schools, we haven't talked about them, but we will at some point.
Yeah, and actually, we will be getting to that shortly. But let's go on.
So yeah, just talking a little bit more about the Green Choice program that I talked about. The goal really is to get everybody, you know, to non-carbon emitting as close as we can. And we've, as I explained earlier, we've offered this Green Choice. We have probably 100 and something customers participating in that program. Again, it's a premium on their bill, but that premium has already dropped each of the first 3 years that we've had the program. And I would envision as more of the green resources become available, the cost of those resources will shrink. So that's one positive. The community solar program that I talked about on the roof of our building, it's split into 2 parts, and the part that you can see on the picture there is for community solar. It's about approximately 130 kW. It's almost fully subscribed. When we created the program, we set aside some portion of it for low income, so there's no initial entry fee, and it should provide a positive payback for lower income customers from day one. There's an entry cost for non-low income, but we've waived it for low income. Our non-low income side is fully subscribed at this point, and we have a little bit left on the low income side. So the program has been successful, and it's out of the gate, and it's actually active as we speak. So
And just a quick sidebar, who is or was Kenneth J. Chase Jr.?
Kenneth was, he's a commissioner that retired after over 40 years of service to the light department. The project itself is going to be dedicated this summer in his name, and we're just waiting for a time when he and his whole family are available to have a special day. So
Very cool.
But Ken served the light department for over 40 years, and he retired 2 years ago. So he was a great service to our public power entity for a long time. We really appreciate it. So we've built this project in partnership with a company called Amoresco. So we have a fixed lease for 20 years with them, and this whole project it's really, it's getting out of the gate right now, and it's again, it's been functioning for, unfortunately, it started functioning in April, but it was very cloudy April. But we're hoping for a sunnier May and June. So
You get 2 days, and then you get five days of.
it felt like we hadn't seen the sun since Christmas. Let's put it that way.
And we're back to that outside.
So you're to
now.
blame.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. As soon as we turned it on, it got cloudy. So these are some of the benefits. Again, adapting the capacity and the resources that we have available. And I think that it's very important that customers that don't necessarily have the opportunity, and this project is open to not only homeowners but also renters. So giving a resource to customers that may not have the opportunity to have solar on their own, that was the goal of this program. And if it's successful, we'll try to look at other locations where we can do community solar type installations. And then the last part I talked about, which is connected homes, hot water heaters, heating and cooling systems, EV chargers. As I mentioned, thermostats. There's a lot more entities being added to this as we go. So any information that any customer wants about any of these programs, it's available on our website at wmgld.com. There's lots of information about not only the resource type programs, but also the rebate type programs. And so, just some of those that I mentioned. First of all, we provide energy audits for free to anybody that wants one. In addition, we offer appliance rebates and yard equipment. We were chatting before the meeting started about we've added yard equipment. Our board's been very proactive in expanding the offerings in places that there's a gap or a need. And one of the things we've done annually for the past 7 years is really look at the programs, and we also do an analysis of kilowatt hours that we think we've saved, as well as cost benefit of those. So if we're giving $100 for a stove, is that on a kilowatt hour basis, is that cheaper or more expensive? Should that rebate be 50 or 125? And so we're constantly doing that analysis to see what's worth it and what isn't, and in terms of what's going on in the marketplace and what's going on, in terms of the energy benefit. Excuse me. In addition, we've increased our rebates on home insulation and heating systems in terms of heat pumps to try to reduce that gap between the cost of a traditional system and the cost of a heat pump system. In addition, we have rebate caps, but we've expanded those caps. If you're doing both insulation and heating and cooling together, we've increased the value of the cap so that you can do more of those things at once. Again, I mentioned the solar at 80 cents a watt and the EV charging and the time of use rate that we've added. So those are just some of the things that we've been working on. And as I said, we haven't been static. We've tried to evolve over time. What's valuable in the marketplace, what's valuable based on the cost of some of the devices we're talking about, and also the energy savings that they generate. And then finally, we will briefly talk about the energy park. On this campus right now, there's 2 major projects going on. The Northeast Tech High School a new school is being built, and right here behind us, there's a new Wakefield High School being built.
Right.
We're very lucky that they're both on Hemlock Road. And one of the things we saw as an opportunity was that we didn't really want either of the buildings to be gas heat because, as I mentioned before, the whole concept of the gas peak heat cost is driver of our cost. So we didn't want 2 large buildings to be added to that. So we were very proactive working with the tech first, and then the high school kind of was already thinking that way. So we were able to design a program, that would allow us to offer the ability for both schools to go all electric heating and cooling. In exchange, what we did was we built what we're calling the Energy Park, which has a battery, solar on both of the roofs of the two schools that will feed the battery, and then a single backup generator at the Energy Park rather than two independent generators at each of the schools. So for emergency conditions, if for some reason there was a loss of power at either building, the battery would be the first thing that takes over for the control of the systems. And only if it was an extended outage would we have to run a generator. But it would be a single generator rather than two diesel generators, one at each building. So,
which was a real great cost savings to both schools.
yeah.
Getting involved in
Well,
this.
and this is one of the things that was brought up when the Energy Park was brought up at town meeting 2 years ago. And, you know, hopefully people at the time really appreciated what this was going to do. Beyond the two schools, though, is there any benefit to the Energy Park to the town at large?
It will, because we'll be able to use those same resources as a capacity resource on a peak day. So we
Okay.
can so if we're projecting a peak day, we can actually run that battery to reduce the system's peak load as a whole. And as I said, the cost of the peak resources is a part of. On the electric side, it's not as significant on the gas, but it's still a driver of cost.
Sure.
And so the fact that we can run a battery and/or a generator during a peak time reduce our overall cost by running it during peak. So that there's a peak that's set each month as well as a peak for the year, and both of those together can be worth over $750,000 a year in terms of savings to the ratepayer by executing the use of these technologies.
Sure.
I
And it
think
says
that's an important point,
Yeah.
not to let
Yeah.
get lost, because the taxpayers in Wakefield voted to increase their taxes to pay for the school.
Right.
So maybe, on the other hand, there'll be a little bit of a break on their, heating or cooling their home,
Right.
or electrical needs. So
they'll get a little bit of a payback.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Well, and one other piece to that, we're putting, as part of this project, we're putting solar on both the schools' roofs
Yep.
from day one. The requirement of the state is that they be solar ready, but we're actually putting the solar on right away. So the way it's going to work is that the school will use whatever solar it can use for its own load,
Right.
and the only thing that will flow back to the energy park is the excess. So if it's at an off-peak time or in the summer, that energy will flow back to the energy park to charge the battery. But in the meantime, the school's load will be reduced from a cost perspective as well, because that solar will be serving the schools.
And that's exactly how each project was presented to the voters at
Correct.
town meeting, when each came up about a year apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to say, this energy park is it is such an incredible concept, and we're already kind of started building. We're getting there.
We're out of the
close.
gate.
We're out of the gate, and what I intend to do in either later this year or next year, depending when we get it more up and running, is present this concept at a Mass Municipal Association for an Innovation Award, because I think it is that cutting edge and that fabulous in this whole genre that I think it is very worthy for.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
that type of award.
Yeah, one other piece of that
Yeah.
before we go on is that we're building this so it could serve as a microgrid.
Yeah.
So in other words, we could completely, at the end of Hemlock Road, we could separate this whole complex from the rest of the system. If there was a massive regional power outage, we could still serve the load within here and serve as a heating or cooling center, for the town as a whole. So there's
Right.
different benefits above and beyond just
Right.
and so, God forbid we had a more regional impact of an outage. It's an emergency resource to the town as well.
Because the high school would be used, Wakefield Memorial High School would be used as an emergency.
As an emergency
yes.
location.
Yeah.
And,
So that was factored in as well.
right. I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember.
Definitely not.
The Eastern Seaboard blackout in 1965, where from the Canadian border right down to Florida, east of the Appalachians was black.
Well, people around here won't remember it as well, but I was with another utility at the time, and I remember the Northeast blackout of 2005, where
Yes.
we as New England survived, but our neighbors all
Correct,
around
yeah.
us, upstate New York, all the way down and all the way out to Ohio, when that one happened, we as New England happened to be lucky because at the time we were exporting power rather than taking it in. But if we had been taking power into New England, we would have gone down too. And that's how lucky we were. But so the point is that those things can happen. And if they do, this tools like this will make us even more secure and have more
Right.
resources available to us.
The other thing that catches my eye is educational opportunities for students at both schools. Let's touch on that just a little
Sure.
bit.
Actually, we just received a grant from the American Public Power Association to further develop those programs. And two of our folks today were actually at the high school talking a little bit about this project and other things around environment. They were at the AP Environmental Science class and two of the other science classes. But the whole idea is really we want to have more information available to students, and we'll have dashboards in terms of what customers can see and what students can see going on in terms of what's coming off the roofs of both schools, what's the current status of the battery, how the battery interacts with the rest of the grid. Also, when how will it operate if the generator needs to kick in? All those, it's all going to be interconnected, and you'll be able to see all those. In addition, we've set aside in the energy park about a 1/4 acre for future technology. So somewhere down the road, and not now, but there'll be more demonstration technologies that we might want to. We might have a carbon capture fuel cell or a flywheel or some other technology, excuse me, that makes sense to include in the energy park. So we've set aside a portion of the land to be ready for a future technology somewhere down the road that makes sense to add into the whole mix of the energy. And that's part of the reason we called it an energy park, because it's got a whole bunch of different resources. It's got solar, it's got battery, it's got generation. Excuse me. So those are the reasons. And so APPA recognized that and gave us $100,000 to help develop more curriculum around
That's
that.
great. Wonderful.
That's fantastic.
So,
Okay.
so that was a lot in a
We had
very
a lot.
Yeah,
short
I
time.
know. No, but I think it's important
It was
because
electrifying.
Wakefield is one of those communities that has its own power company.
Right.
We're not dependent upon National Grid and Eversource and anyone else out there for our power needs. And especially new residents probably don't know or really appreciate what that means to them as residents.
Yeah, I think in terms of public power, we're very lucky because in public power, we have a little bit of more flexibility than an investor-owned utility. First of all, our mission is simpler. Our goal is to keep the lights on and the cost as low as possible, as I said. And we also have the flexibility to work with the town, on smaller projects at a very one-to-one level, as opposed to having to deal with layers and layers of multiple towns. And if we have an idea, or if Steve has a request, we talk to each other and we're able to, figure stuff out at the local level, and you can get a lot more done that
We're
way.
taking advantage on the town level of some solar opportunities in some of our smaller DPW buildings as well. Really trying to see what we can do to make this work. But I think for people that are moving into the community and coming from other communities, and you don't hear about Wakefield, knock on wood, right? Hear about Wakefield being down for days with no power. It's because not only do we get a great product and a greatly competitive price, but the service is better than anybody else around. Not only when something happens, but in the preventative maintenance beforehand. Where Pete has a program, working with our DPW department, where they're anticipating, geez, we're going around the town each year. What limbs are going to cause problems, and they're trimming them ahead of time before, after the storm. Anybody can go in, but we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And a great partnership, whether it's a road project or solar on the roof or charging stations downtown. It's a real
But even the way
symbiotic
that they
relationship.
approach a disaster, and we were talking beforehand a couple of years ago when we had that really freak storm that took out swaths of the north end of
microburst,
town,
yeah.
spared the downtown, and then took out swaths of Greenwood. And I live in Greenwood near to the Melrose line, just down the street from the Greenwood School. And we lost power we were out for 9 hours. That's
Yeah.
it.
That's it.
And we were the last because they started at the north end of town and worked their way down, you know, in a planned manner to get everything back. But there are towns around us who have had winter problems that have been down for 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's a
you
big
know,
difference.
that's something to be said about a local.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that every year at town meeting we have an article to transfer some of the profits to the town in lieu of taxes.
Right. I'd always like more. But we'll take this.
Yeah. I think we always try to look at ways that we can contribute beyond just the pilot payment.
And
with
that's
program-
exactly true, yeah.
You know, one year we replaced all the street lights, you know,
Yep.
so there's been a lot of different ways that we try to contribute above and beyond just the cash payment. And I think that's been hugely valuable. And again, I think the partnership with the town is huge because, as Steve was saying, just around tree trimming, working with Dennis Fazio on it's not just trimming, but it's also vegetation management, identifying places that we can put utility-friendly trees in, where we can take
Exactly.
dead or dying trees down.
Right.
And it's more than just, you know, one thing of trimming a branch. There's a management program in, and
Exactly.
we've also tried to add in tree planting for residents as well. If they have trees that are dead or dying in their front yard that are near a wire, we'd rather help them take that down and replace it with a newer, more utility-friendly tree. So those are some of the things we've been proactively doing, and I think it's working well. We've, in the past 7 years, we've planted well over 300 trees in conjunction with the town, and we have a commitment to plant more trees in the Maple Way in addition to what we already plant. So
What is meant by utility-friendly trees?
trees that will only grow up to about 30 feet in height.
Okay.
But we also want sun and shade trees. So for the right application in the right locations, you can plant taller trees that will help shade certain sides of the sunny side of your house. But it has to involve a little bit of thought. So we actually have an arborist who will go out. If you want to sign up for a customer tree, we'll look at it and say we can put a maple at that location because it's not going to. But if it's going to be in your front yard and close to the wires, maybe we only put a more utility-friendly tree that might only reach 30 feet. So those are the types of things that, you know, with a little thought, you can make a lot of progress because as you know, trees will die and decay and they become a hazard as well. So if you can get them out of the way and replace them with something more, more friendly to the environment and to the utility system, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Peter, thank you very much. This
Thank
is a
you.
great update.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you
We
for
need to
having
bring
me.
you in more often than we do. I think this is only
I
the
went
second
over my
time.
30 minutes, but that's
Well, that's
okay.
okay.
No, it's
We
quite
get to
all
talk
right.
less too,
Yeah.
which is always a good thing.
Well, I appreciate the
But-
invitation.
But I think it's very important information, especially for newer residents who really don't know or understand the value of having a municipal light department versus one of the big conglomerates.
Yeah, we're one of 40 in Massachusetts, and I think, you know, we have tried to take a leadership. We have a great staff, and we have a lot. And I think we've tried to take a leadership role even within that. We tried to be a leader in the crafting of the law in 21 that included us in net zero, but didn't harm us. We could move to the same direction in a way that was beneficial to municipals. And I
Sure.
think, you know, those are the types of things that, you know, Wakefield's been able to take a leadership role, not just a, you know, participant role.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve.
Great.
And thank
Till
you.
next month.
We will see you next month. In the meantime, take care.